Amrita, we understand how tight things are now. How tight do you think they'll be by the time we get to the end of 22?
I think the couple of things I would say where we could get some extra supplies, Iran is of course one of them, potential sanctions lifting in the coming weeks, and you could get more oil out in the second half of the year. US producers, again, they're still being very disciplined, but potentially you could eke out a little bit more from them. But Russell Hardy is exactly right. We've been talking about this for months now, that there is a lot of pent-up demand. Demand is going to be rising, particularly in Asia. And we've talked about this on this show before. Asia just hasn't been able to come out, unlike the West, over the last few years because of COVID restrictions. So they are itching to fly and just get back to a normal life. So there is a lot of demand that we are going to see, particularly in the summer. And the only way to then solve for this market, because you're not going to get much incremental supplies, is going to be through high prices, because demand growth has to moderate.
How much higher? Is $100 oil and above $100 oil sustainable, Amrita?
Well, if you think about back to 2008, compared, or if you do it on an inflation-adjusted basis, oil prices need to be 30% higher now than in 2008 if you are to have the same impact on demand. So yes, it could go significantly higher before you start having an impact on demand. And Tom's going to like this because it talks about elasticities. People have actually saved up a lot more money, and governments are handing out a lot more checks, which means income elasticity right now is a lot stronger than price elasticity. So even at $100 oil, even potentially at $120 oil, you don't see the slowdown that you've seen in the past. We've already, on our numbers, oil demand is already above 100 million barrels per day. We will surpass 2019 levels in the second half of this year, and we will be effectively growing by over 3 million barrels per day this year.
When does supply and demand then come back into balance, or more of a balance, and start to change that equation? How long is it going to take?
I think this is not a short-term thing, $100 oil. I mean, we've been calling for $100+ oil between 23 and 26 for a while, and that is precisely because this isn't a short-term phenomenon. Sure, you're not going to get $100 oil necessarily like this year on a sustained basis, geopolitical risks aside, but this is ultimately about underinvestment. We've had years of underinvestment, and now it's getting much, much worse due to all the narrative around energy transition, but demand simply isn't reacting. If anything, demand is actually rising quicker than anyone had expected. So therefore, there's a huge policy mismatch. Governments are coming out and talking about, the end to fossil fuel without actually doing anything to reduce demand.